Hey everyone, hopefully this is going live in the group. I am getting my internet speed increased next week, so hopefully all of these live broadcasts will work better at that point. But if you're here, welcome. And if you're watching the replay, that's just as good. You'll get all the great insights that we're going to talk about today. The topic was suggested by one of you in the group. And I thought it was a great topic to address because I do want this group to be universal. Like, it's not just about intimate sexual relationships that are abusive partners, but it could be parents, it could be kids, it could be, a minister, priest, it could be, any number of other types of relationships that could end up being abusive. Especially emotionally abusive. It could be a boss, it could be anything. So today we're going to focus on when it's your kids that are abusing you. And this is a difficult topic, actually, because it's not something that people want to talk about. So, even less than talking about emotional abuse in general, being abused by your kids somehow has this increased shame added to it, that people are even more, embarrassed, or they feel it's going to, people will judge them for being bad parents or whatever if they talk about being abused by their kids. So I think it's a great idea to let's bring it out there, nothing to be ashamed of. Let's talk about it. There's obviously different types of abuse would happen at different ages, and we didn't really specify a particular age, but from the research that I've been doing, often our kids begin to abuse us more around the age of maybe 9 or 10, that it can start that young. And as obviously teenagers can be very abusive emotionally to their parents, and also then later on, as your kids become adults or young adults, they can be extremely abusive at that point, and it can carry on into future. It becomes kind of an elder abuse thing if adult kids are abusing their elderly parents. So that whole spectrum of abuse can start, and as most of us probably know and understand, the abusive kind of cycle is often started in our family of origin, and maybe even in their family, and we could have a long history of abusive relationships in our family. So the kids that are growing up in these kinds of homes, if you were, let's say, in an abusive relationship with a partner, and your kids are seeing that all the time, it's pretty common for them to take on those roles, to either side with the abuser or with the abused, and they're either a rescue or a persecutor, or they learn the cycle right from the get-go. So I was talking to a woman yesterday, and we were saying how much it affects your kids when you're staying in an abusive relationship. So it's extremely important to consider that as one of the biggest effects of being emotionally abused, is not just on yourself, but for your children. If you have young children, from infant, they've shown research that it starts affecting them, and the children do pick up those patterns. They pick up that anxiety, they pick up stress, and down the road that can lead to a lot of things. So as I said, I see a few of you are coming on now. Welcome. Hopefully this is all working for you. We were saying that many parents are ashamed to talk about being abused by their kids because they feel that they haven't done a good job. And as women that have been emotionally abused in any relationship, we tend to self-blame. We take all the blame on ourselves. And so this happens as well. If our kids are abusing us, we take the blame. It must be something I did wrong. It must be something that I haven't taught them. I didn't give them the security they needed. I didn't give them the therapy they needed. I didn't understand. Whatever it is, we take on the responsibility for that. And, you know, that is not necessarily the case. Kids pick things up from all over the place. They may pick stuff up from you and your direct, you know, family in your house, but they also, you know, they go out and interact with the world. They interact with media, you know, TV programs, computer games, and movies, and other people at school, other kids, other families that they maybe hang out with. They can pick up things from all of those sources that may have nothing to do with you. You may have been gold star parent, always done, you know, and they would still somehow pick up these abusive patterns from somewhere else. So let's just take the stigma off the whole thing. It's not your fault, first of all, if your kids become abusive. However, you do have the power to direct the relationship and how it will be with your kids going forward. So yes, you have to disconnect and just take away the self-blame, but you do need to take responsibility at the point that you're at right now in how you're going to move forward with this relationship. And again, this is true with any abusive relationship, any relationship actually. You are in control, and you have a choice about how you're going to move forward with that. So finding support, and, you know, maybe close friends, maybe a therapist that you can confide in and say, you know, I don't know if this is abuse or not. I don't know if my kids are abusing me. Should I be worried about this? It's something that, you know, if you're not sure, because again, as women that have been emotionally abused, we just think it's normal. We should put up with that. We're the mom. Of course they're going to shout at us, whatever. That this becomes our normal, and so we're not even seeing that abuse. And I'll just jump in with a bit of a personal story in here is, you know, my background and my abuse history. You know, the reason that I'm passionate about this work was kind of complex, but my oldest daughter ended up with eating disorder, and her way of coping with all the stress that was going on in the family, and in becoming like a victim in that way, she actually, as a teenager, I guess she was probably 15 or 16 around the time, and she would be abusive emotionally to me, shouting, throwing things, screaming, like breaking stuff in the house, all of that. And for sure, she had valid reasons for feeling, you know, not being able to deal with her feelings and not being heard and not feeling in control. All of those things were valid. However, it was emotionally abusive towards me as being the only parent at that point. And, you know, so I had to listen to people in my life, you know, outside of me and my children, to tell me, you know, this is not okay. That's not okay what she's saying to you, or how she's doing that. That is abusive. And I had to really sit with that and you know, do some work around that to get to a place where I could start having boundaries and standing up for, you know what, I will talk to you this way, and, you know, when you can respond, we'll talk, and this, you know, we are going to go to the doctor, and this is when we're leaving, and you need to be ready. And to keep my cool and have confidence that what I was doing was, you know, a good thing. And, you know, if she screamed and shouted about it, that was her issue. And to do it in a loving way, because obviously you're the mom, these are your children, you love them, you don't want to, you know, say I'm cutting you out of my life unless it gets to a point where you need to do that. But obviously, if they're still struggling with things and you are able to negotiate having these kind of boundaries, that would be something to start with. But to know that the abuse is never acceptable. It's never acceptable for you to be emotionally abused, because it's not helping them, it's not helping you. It's not helping the relationship, it's not helping you move forward. You know, so you may need some support and help in how to set limits, how to, you know, if you're on the phone, like if it's an adult child and they call you up, or in my case, my teenager would call me at 3 in the morning and wake me up and want to talk for an hour about something that was bothering her. And so being able to set limits and saying, I'm happy to talk with you, but it needs to be at the times when I am awake, not at 3 in the morning. And so you might have to end a phone call if they call you and they start screaming at you on the phone or whatever. You may need to actually end the phone call and say, I'm happy to talk to you about this, but not when you're shouting at me. Call me back when you're calm. Click. End of story. So, the other thing you want to do is also maybe refuse to give time or money or advice until you are treated properly. And again, this isn't like you have to be like, well, I'm not talking to you until you do this. Like, obviously, you want to, as much as you can, get your resentment and anger out somewhere else. You go see a therapist, go out with a friend, get your stuff out somewhere else. And when you're dealing with your kid, these are the limits. I am not going to talk to you until you're talking in a tone of voice that I can hear. I can't listen to what you're saying when you're screaming. I'm not going to give you money until I know what it's for. I'm not going to, give you any more time or whatever when I've made plans with my friends today. I can't just cancel all those to be with you. These are the kind of limits and things that you can absolutely do and should be doing. And here's the thing I found in my circumstance with teenagers is that the complaining and the abuse after I've set the limit was very short-lived. 5 minutes. I could practically time it to the second. It was usually about 5 minutes of, well, Mom, you're so this, you're so that, la 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 la, all the torrent of why this is so unfair. And after 5 minutes, as long as I didn't give in, it was gone. And they were like, ugh, all right, I guess I have to do this. And then they got on with it. And literally timing, I was like, okay, breathe. Don't say anything. Don't give in for 5 minutes. It worked. And after 5 minutes, they were okay with what I had said. So that's my experience in me personally. I would guess that extrapolating that to, depending on how long this pattern has been going on. So if you're dealing with an adult child, let's say in their 30s or 40s or whatever, they'll have a lot more history of them being able to scream, shout, stomp, threaten you, whatever it is. They'll have a whole history of that, and that you give in. They will try that for longer. So it may take longer than 5 minutes, but it may take a few days, it may take a week or so. That will, in the end, they will be okay with the limit, and they will appreciate the limit. Actually, somewhere deep down, they will, because that's the only way you improve these kind of relationships. Now, the one interesting time that it's also difficult with kids abusing their parents is if the parent, if you're moving on in time and the parent is older and becomes dependent, or maybe just sick, becomes dependent on the child's support, or the child coming in to clean for them or taking them to the bank or whatever it is, what kind of ever support. If the parent has no other means of support except for maybe this one kid that's abusive, that makes it really tricky for the parent, because if they set any limits and the kid goes away, they're stuck. So, what seems obvious is that if that's you and you're over here and you're isolated and you have nobody else to help you or whatever, and you have this one kid that helps you but comes in and takes control of your money, or doesn't let you go out to see friends, or starts controlling and abusing you, and you have no other means of support, then of course there is going to be a really difficult choice there for you. And I would say, hopefully that if you could start to reach out, if you're joining a Facebook group like this, just start reaching out and getting other people involved in your life. if it's a doctor, if it's a, a visiting care worker, if it's a neighbor, if it's anybody, if you can start opening up your circle to anybody else so that you're not totally dependent on this one kid who, can see that and maybe make that worse. They're like, we don't want you to go out. We don't want you to do this. We're worried about you falling, da, 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 da. And they make this whole story around why you shouldn't be going out or seeing anyone else or having control of anything. You're not mentally capable of looking after your own money or your property, and they take all the control away. Again, maybe you do need that kind of support, but this sets up the possibility that you could be abused by your kids. And so, really trying to find other people to support you. And again, just talking to this group and realizing that anybody in this kind of emotional manipulative abuse, usually the manipulator wants to isolate you because then they have more control and their abuse works better. They keep you down in, where they want you by keeping you isolated. So the more you can reach out, make connection, have people in the background, even if it's kind of secret at first, you just have connections with people that your abuser doesn't know about, so that you have eyes on the outside that can see what's going on. So that would be the same if you were an older parent and you have children. You want people to know what's going on, and you want to have some eyes on the outside. You want to have some other people. So if you set a limit and say, no, I'm not going to give you $2,000 right now, that, and they go away for a week, that you have other people that you can call in. So, it's easy to get caught in that. And I would just say, trust and really try to stay connected in your community. I'm just going to talk for a couple minutes about, basically all of us grow up in family dynamics with a victim triangle, it's called. So you have different places on the victim triangle. You have the persecutor, the rescuer, and the victim. And you can see that the rescuer is usually where the woman ends up, the persecutor usually where the man ends up, and the victim, the child. But internally, we all have parts of each one. And we all have the possibility of being all of those, actually. So if you start really going into this, which I do in my 8-week intensive course, we really dive into this, because finding out where you enter this triangle and how you go around this triangle, how you talk to yourself internally, is super important to see how you end up being a victim or how you persecute others, or which I hate to say it, but if you're anywhere on the victim triangle, you will go through all three. So this was from a parent that was a natural rescuer, and she said, I thought my role as a good mother was to make sure that my sons towed the line. Sounds reasonable, right? I believed I was responsible for the choices they made. Start noticing that languaging. I believed I was responsible for the choices they made, and I told them what to do, and constantly attempted to control their behavior because I felt I was responsible for that. Start seeing where that becomes a triangle set up for an abusive kind of relationship. She's taking responsibility for her son's choices and for their behavior. Therefore, she needs to control that behavior to make sure it's good. So, as her kids grow up, they start blaming her for their painful consequences of their own poor choices, because she has made, in her mind even, maybe she's never told them, she said, she thinks, I'm responsible for your choices and how you do that. I need to make sure you make good choices. Now, if they don't make good choices, which kids always rebel or do something different, and then they have a bad experience, in their mind, they're like, well, it's mom's fault, because she was supposed to be watching out for us. She was supposed to be telling us not to do this or to do that. So they start blaming her. And in that also they blame other people. So they just become like, oh, I'm a victim and it's everyone else's fault. So they have taken on her belief that she is responsible. So you can see how that would set up a very interesting abusive situation where at least she had 2 boys. At least one of those was probably very likely to become a persecutor of others, because he'd be like, well, it's your fault that all this crap happened in my life. So if he's grown up with, it's my mom's responsibility to look out and make sure I make good choices, and if I make bad choices, that's her fault too, and the pain that I have to endure because of those choices is her fault as well, that just sets up the thing that he can just keep blaming her for everything bad, or every pain that he has is her fault. And then he could easily become abusive in that whole dynamic. But if you look back at the beginning of the story, you know, she was just thinking she was a good parent, trying to, you know, be a good mother and make sure that her kids made good choices. So, you know, it's not a judgment against if you think you're a bad person or not. We all have a certain level of skill as parents, and sometimes we just get it wrong, and it's not really our fault. But once we see that we aren't really, what we're doing is maybe not helping, it is our responsibility to take a step back and go, wait a second, this is not giving me the outcome that I was expecting. How can we shift this dynamic? And it may take some time. It may take a lot of time. If this is years and years and years of abuse that is coming together, it may take you quite a while to redefine these relationships. But, you know, it is possible. We dive into this in great detail in my course. So, you know, if you're interested in that, private message me about that for sure, if you want more support with how to make those changes. And just to kind of finish up, these were some tips on a website that I found, talking about, you know, it's good to do some research as to what is reasonable to expect of our adult children. So again, I'm talking about adult children here. So if your kids move back home, let's say, and they're young adults, they, you know, typically should be working or going to school full time or doing both. If you're going to let them just live rent free or very low rent or whatever you know, however you negotiate that. But they shouldn't just be moving home and sitting on the couch eating chips and watching Netflix. They should be actively contributing to the household. That's just something that helps them to take responsibility for their lives. And if they are working full time and they're just moving home so they can, I don't know, save for a down payment for a house or whatever, they should be paying their own expenses, their own cell phone bill, their own car payment, the, you know, contributing to the household bills, food. You know, this is a normal expectation of a young adult, you know, so you can research that, you can discuss with your friends, you know, come up with something that sounds reasonable for your family. Your kids should respect your sleep schedules. Like, I had to, you know, I still sometimes have to remind my kids that I am asleep between, you know, 11 and 7. I'm off mom duty unless it's a life or death emergency. Don't call me, don't wake me up. You know, they need to respect that. And you don't, as a parent, owe them anything. You don't owe them dollars. You don't owe them a place to live. You don't owe them anything. Once they've reached the age of, you know, 18, 19, 20, or they're through their first degree at university, whatever it is, you don't owe them the kind of lifestyle that maybe they've grown up with. You know, you might have busted your ass, or you and your partner have worked really hard to create, you know, build up your business or whatever. You have a certain comfort lifestyle. You don't owe it to your kids to just give them money to maintain that lifestyle without letting them realize how to work for it themselves. And again, you know, there's variation between how you want to do that. But, you know, I'm not saying never help your kids, but really be clear about when you're helping them and when they need to actually take responsibility. So overall, as with any kind of emotional abuse or any kind of abuse really, but in this case, parents must be able to say no and they must be able to stop or prevent the abuse, to claim their peace, and to control their finances and manage their time. Parents just should be able to do that. And once your kids are of a certain age, you should definitely be able to, you know, say to them, I'm not available at that time. I can't come over on the weekend. I'm going somewhere with my friend or whatever. And you should be able, you know, you are going to have to work if that's not your typical way of acting in the past and you want to change it up now. It may take some time. You're going to need to practice as well. And it might displease your kids. Please note, this might not make your kids very happy with you. This is not necessarily a bad thing if your kids are upset with you. It may actually be a really good thing. So you might have to deal with your own stuff about having your kids being upset with you. That's something you need to take to a therapist, or you need to take, you know, you go to friends and whatever, get some support with that. But you sticking to some boundaries and saying no, if that makes your kids upset, that isn't a bad thing. That might actually be a good thing. So that's kind of where I think I want to leave it today, and hopefully that helps a little bit. The person that requested this talk, we didn't really go into the specifics of what she was hoping to get from that, but leave your comments underneath the video and let me know if this helped you think through it at all, if there was anything that you would want me to talk on in another Facebook Live. I do these every week, at least once a week, on Wednesdays usually, and I'm open to topics that you would like to request. If you want to just mention a topic in the group or private message me a topic that you're interested in, I'm more than happy to do a Facebook Live on that. And again, I have a very intense and productive and super great outcomes in my 8-week program for women that have been emotionally abused. It's delivered all online, so you don't need to live near me. We can do it by Zoom chat and meetings and calls and emails. So if you're interested in that, or learning more about what other options that there might be available for supporting you to work through the effects of emotional abuse, private message me, drop me a line. You can look at www.ailsakepi.com/apply is my schedule, and I think I've posted here a bunch of times. I'll put it under as well, the link to book a call with me. The breakthrough calls are about 45 minutes long. If you're interested in making a change in your life and you want some support with that, you want some, you know, you have to power up your work, and you want some really good exercises and information and classes and coaching on how to make these changes stick, you know, please book a call with me. It's absolutely free to talk to me. I would love to hear where you are and where you would like to get to. All right, and that's all for today, folks. So thank you all, those of you who joined in live, and I will now upload this for replay. All right, have a great day.